First of all, good morning. Today's presentation is around intelligent process automation for municipalities and ministries. It's basically creating a comprehensive BPA strategy for successful process automation using Harrington County as an example of how that can be accomplished. So first of all, I'd like to introduce myself. If you have, I'm Julian Charles. I'm solution architect and Nintex lead with De Facto. De Facto is a premier partner with Nintex, one of only 3 premier partners in Canada. We work quite closely with Nintex. So I'll start with a little bit of background on Nintex and how Nintex has a history of innovation through process automation and how they're really leading this next era of BPA. So if we start on the left, BPM, massive initiatives, full code initiatives executed by organizations like IBM and Pega. And then there was kind of a shift to Appian and K2 in that BPA in the business process automation space. And then you've got Nintex as a forefront and a leader in the workflow and content automation space just prior to where we're at today. Now we're moving into what's being termed as the intelligent process automation space. And that's kind of a maturity of that WCA, that workflow and content automation. And we'll get into that today in the demonstration. I just want to draw your attention to the bottom of this slide with regards to the number of software developers, the number of people that are working generally in IT. So we've got about 25 million software developers, 75 million plus admins and operational professionals, and then 220 million analysts and power users with over 840 million information workers. Now, it really makes sense to start targeting information workers with a product suite and tools that really enable their capability for process automation and intelligent process automation at that. So the long tail of business processes and kind of the constraints a lot of organizations are experiencing within digital transformation is a lot of companies are utilizing and relying on unstructured data with a tremendous amount of manual approaches for work processes, just throwing labor at the problem rather than looking at ways to improve upon a process and gradually move towards an automated process. So if we were to look at the number of all enterprise processes that are really quite manual and require human interaction in simple and sophisticated areas, there's a massive target of around 68% that are simple to sophisticated processes where Nintex can really facilitate and reduce the complexity of a process. Now, that doesn't mean that it doesn't also work in that highly complex space, but the idea is to work through your maturity models and start with simple things, even sophisticated things perhaps as well. And as the maturity and utilization of the platform increases, and as that knowledge base increases as well, the capability to work in the highly complex areas and to truly automate highly manual processes becomes available to the organization. Now, IPA is based around 6 core capabilities. The first of those is advanced workflow. And if you think of advanced workflow, you're thinking of Nintex perhaps from a SharePoint on-premise perspective or an O365 perspective, but there's also Nintex Workflow Cloud, which is platform agnostic. Then we've got the document generation capabilities, the facilitation to create dynamic documents utilizing input from contextualized data, from mobile apps, perhaps from forms as well. And then we've got the RPA, the robotic process automation. And I just want to talk on RPA a little bit. RPA, when coupled with IPA, is the ability to automate repetitive tasks. Now, it's a coupling, right? Because the idea of IPA is that you're going to transform a process. You're going to look at what the ins and the outs are and look at process improvement. Now, process intelligence is a way to facilitate, govern, analyze, and drive efficiency utilizing analytics and insights in a real-time manner. Machine intelligence, cognitive capabilities, the ability to utilize services that are available in the cloud to consume machine intelligence and get assistance to complete tasks that are utilizing best of breed machine learning and perhaps some natural language query processing as well. So those are the 6 core capabilities of an IPA portfolio. Some of the areas that these can be applied to really quickly are sales and finance and legal activities that are being taken. The idea is to really take a look at what your business processes currently are and carve those up into areas that can be automated, and then eventually get to a place where you're automating that entire activity and or process, connecting to external line of business applications, consuming web services, things of that nature, or remaining within the platform of choice, such as your ECMs or your CRMs, and whatever they are. So some of the use cases that Nintex specializes in for solutions for government include requisition, vendor management, inventory management, the idea for safety inspections, both on-site, off-site, incident reporting, the ability to manage cases and case management, any external facing forms, so forms that need to be published to the public, mobile worker forms, the ability to facilitate leave requests and track, even into your internal HR line of business application, and then some other HR functions such as employee onboarding, terminations, also public record requests, licensing, permits, and certification. So there's a tremendous amount of business activities that Nintex specializes in for government. So the Nintex platform, it really is about automating, orchestrating, and optimizing, utilizing advanced workflow such as Nintex workflow for SharePoint 0365 and Nintex Workflow Cloud, the ability to design and publish mobile applications using App Studio, the ability to design modern forms that are both responsive and able to adapt to whichever screen is presenting the form, dynamic document generation, as mentioned, utilizing context awareness, meaning the user or the persona that is filling out data, as well as the user's data entry into that document generation piece to generate documents, as well as process intelligence, ML, and AI. So it's all about doing more with less. And who doesn't want to do that? So in a typical scenario, if we think of what original forms look like, and I'm just going to pull that up on screen. So this is Harrington County. And Harrington County, like a lot of organizations, they've got a number of paper-based manual processes that will typically initiate when someone from the community, from Harrington County, completes a form either on paper or made via a fillable PDF. Now, manual process, right? It's still somewhat digital. I'm going to enter my data in a very similar manner as to a web form. However, it is a little bit cumbersome. I'm probably going to have to print this form. I'm going to have to sign it date it, and then perhaps scan it again to bring it in to a way for me to facilitate providing this document with the appropriate user within Harrington County. So the PDF form, although it has some benefits, it has a tremendous amount of drawbacks as well. So Nintex took this use case and turned the property tax rebate application process kind of around. They looked at a number of start mechanisms. So how the process really starts. Well, it can start from an application that has been submitted via mail, scanned via an online form, or via mobile. There needs to be a notification that needs to occur to the applicant. Storage of that document needs to be secure. It needs to be in some type of content management system, some type of CRM somewhere perhaps as well. And a case needs to be created and a record updated. So there needs to also be a review of that submission. Somebody needs to perhaps go through a rejection or an approval process for the applicant. And the applicant needs to be informed of that approval or that rejection. Finally, a document needs to be generated and stored that indicates that the rebate was either approved or rejected, and the ability to find the historical and related data to that entry as well. And then the notification that the applicant has actually received their rebate and that it has been issued. So around a simple process of what we look at from a manual perspective, and then if we look at that process from a digital perspective. So the use case is really Harrington County. We're looking to move from a paper-based process by which citizens were applying for a refund on their property taxes, getting away from that existing PDF form and getting to a more user-friendly, responsive web experience using Nintex Cloud. So there's a number of pieces that will come into play as I go through this demonstration today. I'm going to be functioning as two characters, two roles. I'll both be myself, Julian Charles, and I'll also be Thor, Julian Charles. And I want to start by filling out the form as an applicant for a property tax reform claim. So I've come to the Harrington County website. On the Harrington County website, there's information about how I can connect with Harrington County perhaps. And then there's information regarding how I handle property tax rebates and employee pensions enrollments. So I'm interested in a property tax rebate. There's some information that's indicated as to how to fill out this form and how to sign up for my property tax reminder. I'm going to come to the form, populate the form with Odinson Thor, make sure that I fill out the necessary information, ensuring that the rules and the expressions around the population of that data have been met. If I don't have data, Nintex is indicating that data is required. I believe I'm going to receive a refund as Odinson Thor Thunder. I believe I'm going to receive a refund of $1,500 for the year 2017. If I had a different address to mail my check to, I can utilize a show hide within that checkbox. If I were to check a different address, I can also attach files. Now, as part of fulfilling this rebate, I do need to attach an associated file, which is the 1098 form. So I've attached my 1098 form. I now have to indicate that I understand if I submit this form falsely, that I may be committing some type of perjury, but that this information certifies to be true. So I check that box and I apply my Odin signature. Now, Odin has a hammer, so I want them to know that I am Thor, so there's a terrible hammer as well. So I'm just going to hit done. And what's going to occur here is I'm going to submit this form. The files are going to be uploaded, and a couple of things are going to occur. Now, while that occurs, I'd just like to draw our attention to what's occurring in the background. So if I were to look within the process for Harrington County, I can see that I have my start event form. I have a beacon, which is associated with my analytics. I'm creating a record in Salesforce, retrieving that same record, getting that as a collection, creating a folder within Box, which is the ECM. So Salesforce is functioning as the CRM, Box is functioning as the ECM. I'm then going to send a notification. So we're now at this point of sending an email. Julie and Charles will have received a notification indicating that I now have a task to review a particular case. I can see the attachment that was associated with this case, the 1098, which was the prerequisite, and a case number has been associated. So now, in order for me to move this process along, I'll need to verify the documents and move the case to the next step. So I'm going to click Verify Documents. It's going to bring me to the case number. I can indicate whether the case is going to be approved or rejected. In this particular instance, I'm actually going to reject this request. I can't confirm that Odin is who he says he is, so I'm going to ask Odin to attach his driver's license. And I'm going to submit that rejection. So now if I come back, I can see that there's this verification of documents that's occurred, and under my rejection, using state machine, I've changed the state. Now, Odin should receive a notification that indicates at the same time that there are some missing details around his request. So I've come into Odin's email and it indicates that additional documentation is required in order for me to fulfill this request. So I'm just going to come in, click the hyperlink for the applicable case number, click to resubmit my request. As you can see, case number is basically acting as the unique identifier. I'm now going to select my files, re-upload my driver's license as Odin, And in this particular case, we could, go through a multi-stage review, but I'm just going to submit, and the task will now be approved. There's a couple activities that are going to occur after that. So I've submitted my rebate. I can see who else has been submitting property tax refunds using the Hawkeye Analytics engine. I can filter, basically utilizing the capabilities of Microsoft Power BI coupled with Hawkeye to see when taxes have been processed and by what year, what the average refund has been, how many refunds are pending, the average refund processing time, as well as the area that these refunds have been applied to. Whilst that's been occurring, two things will happen as we move to the next state. Just wait for that activity to occur, and the document will have been generated for Odin. So the final stage has occurred. My final review, my tax claim has been approved. I can now look within the tax claim. A PDF has been attached relating to my request, and I can see that the data that has been populated within my request has been generated within the PDF, including my signature, my driver's license, and the requirement, the form 1098, for me to be able to fulfill this activity. We do have a few minutes left. I'd like to open the floor perhaps to some questions, and we can look to take a deeper dive into the various areas of the application. The authentication to access the form, you would notice there was actually no authentication to access the form. The form is actually published externally. So the form is available anywhere. And if we were to look into at our canvas, I'm just going to bring the workflow back up. The ability to publish externally and consume these forms in any ECM is really quite simple. And I just want to show that quickly. So there's something called the start event. Our start event was the form if we cast our minds back. If I were to design the form, you can see I've got a very friendly canvas for designing the form. But upon publishing of the form, what occurs is there's an identifier that's associated with this particular workflow. And there's a public URL that can then be exposed for people entering data. Or I can utilize an iframe to embed into basically any content management system that I have available to me as an organization. So regarding licensing is transparent and scalable. It's really simple and is licensed by the number of workflows that you're looking at. So if you do this with a contract process, for example, this is just one process. So you are basically licensing the product on a process basis. So if I have one process that I'm looking to automate, I can license at a minimum of 5. Typically, you'd look to identify your use cases and actions for automation. So Nintex Workflow Cloud is also a completely cloud service product. It's completely technology agnostic. It has out-of-the-box connectors to most common services, It has an extensions framework as well, and it's natively available in many different ecosystems such as Microsoft, Salesforce, Box, for example. Extremely easy to use with drag and drop capabilities. With that in mind, I just want to say there are a couple things to consider. Think about your roadmap and prioritization and whereabouts Nintex falls within that process. Consider your governance and maturity. And De facto has a number of tools and methodologies that can help facilitate you with that. I just want to thank you for your time today. Thank you very much and have a pleasant morning.